A reporter, when they were interviewing Prabhupada, said, "You must encounter a lot of problems in your travels." And Prabhupada said, "I don't have any problems. You have problems." So that's funny, but it's also true, and it's also very interesting. So what did Prabhupada mean? When you're living in Krishna consciousness, even for a devotee who's not transcendental, but is situated in the mode of goodness by following the regulative principles, rising early, being clean, hearing and chanting, and so forth, you won't have problems because all problems stem from being in passion and ignorance. Now you might say, well, don't you get old? Don't you get diseased? Yes, but those won't be problems for you. And as we know, so many problems are caused by actions in the mode of passion and ignorance. And that's why Prabhupada once said, made this very heavy statement, if you're not happy, you're not a devotee. Because he meant that if you're a devotee, you will be situated at least in Sattva guna. And if you're in Sattva guna, you're free from the miseries caused by passion and ignorance. So naturally, you'll be happy. Even a materialist will be happy, what to speak of a devotee. So the miseries come from passion. As we know, Krishna says passion gives temporary pleasure and then it leaves you with misery. And ignorance, Krishna says, is only misery, beginning, middle, and end. So when Prabhupada says, I don't have any problems, he also mentioned that to us, that if you have problems, that means there's a problem in your execution of Krishna consciousness, because if you execute Krishna consciousness properly, you won't have any problems, even if you do have problems. And so that's the point. You say, we won't have any problems. You won't have any problems, even if you do have problems. They won't be problems for you. And that's why Prabhupada said, no, I don't have any problem, because we're under Krishna's guidance, under Krishna's protection. So why is this important? You might say, well, this is obvious, this is simple, I already know this. Why it's important is because it's a gauge of our Krishna consciousness. If your life is full of problems, I'm not talking about externally, although that may be there, because they may be caused by actions in passion and ignorance. But if your life is problematic, you're unhappy, this and that, dealing with this and that, Prabhupada's point is that must mean you're not executing Krishna consciousness properly, because if you were, you wouldn't have any problems. That's his point. If you were, you wouldn't have any problems, unhappiness, and so forth. So once I told the story, you may have heard this story, a devotee wrote to Prabhupada, there's so many problems, this problem, that problem. So Prabhupada was going down the list, and he wrote back with his diagnosis. Offensive chanting, that was his diagnosis. Say, for example, you're a doctor, and a patient comes and says, I have these symptoms. Then you may know it's probably because this person is eating certain foods, or maybe because they're not exercising, or they're not getting enough rest, or they're deficient in a certain vitamin. You know by the symptom. Some things are obvious. So when the devotee said to Prabhupada, I have this problem, that problem, then Prabhupada knew by the symptom, you must not be chanting properly, or even at all, because if you were chanting properly and you were following the four principles, you would not have these problems. So that's a reflection for all of us. If we're dealing with big anarthas, if we're dealing with unhappiness, what to speak of depression and so forth, it may be due to the simple fact that our execution of Krishna consciousness is not being done properly. For if it is, we should be at least transcending passion and ignorance, where all the misery and all the problems reside. So hopefully we can come to this point when people say, you must have problems. We say, no, I don't have any problems. You have problems. And if we say, I have problems, that means then we're like everybody else. So we don't want to say that. We don't want to be like everyone else. Hare Krishna.